In this video, I'm going to show you how I built this home office desk. To construct the desktop, I used 4 pieces of premium grade 1x6, 34 inches long. I measure and mark for the pocket holes that will hold the desktop together. To make the pocket holes, I use my Craig pocket hole jig. I start by setting it up. I set the jig to 3/4 of an inch, which is the thickness of a 1x6. I then take a stop collar and place it on the drill bit, which I set to 3/4 of an inch using the gauge provided in the case. I align the jig with the mark I made, and then I clamp it on. Now I'm ready to drill my pocket holes. I assemble the desktop using 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. I sand the desktop smooth using my belt sander and a 120 grit sanding belt. I use a router to cut a groove in a piece of 1x4 board. This groove will later be used to hold the bottom of the desk drawer. The pieces of 1x4 board that are used to construct the desk drawer are one 21 1/8 inch long piece, one 18 5/8 inch long piece, two 12 3/4 inch long pieces, and two 12 inch long pieces with grooves cut. The drawer box is also assembled using 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. The clamps are used to hold the boards in alignment while the screws are being driven. On the drawer front, I measured in 2 inches from each end and made a mark. This tells me where the inside edge of the drawer box will be and allows enough room to accommodate the drawer rails and the drawer slides. I also made a mark in the exact center of the drawer front for the knob. The drawer bottom is cut from 1/4 inch plywood. To attach the drawer bottom, I use wood glue. And also a few brad nails. I measured for the position of the drawer rail and am about to screw it on using 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. These boards here are just scrap to allow me something to attach my clamps to. The main pieces of 2x6 board that are used to construct the legs of the desk are 4 5.5 inch long square pieces, 2 24 3/4 inch long pieces, 2 20-inch long pieces with 45-degree angles on them. The 20 inches is on the long side, and 2 22-inch long pieces. To make the pocket holes in the 2x6 boards, I'm going to be using my single hole Kreg pocket hole jig, which I've positioned in 1 1/4 inches from the end of the board as per the instructions for 1.5 inch thick material. I've also adjusted the stop collar on my drill bit for 1.5 inch thick material. I measure and mark 3/4 inch either side of the center of the 22-inch and 20-inch long boards. This is so that the vertical member of each leg set will be perfectly centered. I attach the square blocks to the bottom of the 22-inch long sections of 2x6 using 2.5 inch screws. I aligned the 24 3/4 inch long piece, which will serve as the vertical member of the leg set, with the centering marks I made earlier, and will attach it using 3 2.5 inch long pocket hole screws, 2 on this side and 1 on the center of the other side. The top part of the leg set is also attached using 2.5 inch pocket hole screws. 2 screws on one side, 1 on the other. The long side of the angle goes on top. I fill the pocket holes on the leg sets using glue and pocket hole plugs. I sand down the pocket hole plugs with my belt sander. The 1x4s used for the brace pieces on the leg sets are as follows: 4 14.5 inch long pieces and 4 16-inch long pieces. The angles cut on the 14.5 inch long pieces are 32 degrees and 58 degrees. The angles cut on the 16-inch long pieces are 50 degrees and 40 degrees. For the pocket holes on the brace pieces, I am using my single hole Kreg jig, but I set things up a little bit differently than usual. Normally with 3/4 inch wood, one would align the jig with the edge of the board, but here, instead of aligning with the edge of the board, I align with the short side of the angle. This is because if I were to align with the edge of the board, it would just make a big hole and ruin the piece. I tested this all out on scrap ahead of time. To attach the brace pieces to the leg sets, I line them up with pencil marks I made for centering them, and then screw them on with 1.5 inch pocket hole screws. I found that the 1.5 inch size works best in this application by experimenting with scrap. I fill in the pocket holes on the braces with glue and pocket hole plugs. I sand down the pocket hole plugs on the braces with my belt sander. For the desk shelf, I use a piece of premium grade 1x8, 34 inches long. I make the supports for the desk shelf out of 1/2-inch black steel pipe. I use 2 6-inch nipples and 4 flanges. The supports are assembled like so. The desk shelf supports are then painted using spray paint. The pieces of the desk have been finished with a cherry stain and varnish. Now I'm ready to begin installing the drawer slides. I start by measuring up 1.25 inches from the bottom of the drawer, as per the installation instructions for the slides. I then align the top of the slide with that mark and mark for my pilot holes. I drill my pilot holes using a 5/64 inch drill bit, which is short enough to not go all the way through the wood. The drawer slides are attached to the drawer box using the screws provided with them. To attach the drawer rail portions of the drawer slides, I first connect the drawer box and then slide it into position between the drawer rails. I use these pieces here as spacers because they're 1/8 inch thick, and you need an 1/8 inch gap between the top of the drawer box and the bottom of the desktop. Without this gap, the drawer will tend to be very tight and will tend to jam. Once I get the drawer slides in alignment, I clamp them on with clamps, and I use my level to check to make sure they're level, and then I screw them on using the screws provided. I measured and marked to center the pipe flanges of the pipe supports on the bottom of the desk shelf. I also measured in 1 inch from each edge. I marked my pilot holes, which I will carefully drill with a 1/8 inch drill bit, being very careful not to go through the wood. The pipe supports are attached using 3/4 inch long screws. I attach the other ends of the desk shelf pipe supports to the back of the desktop using more 3/4 inch screws. I attach a knob to the desk drawer. I install furniture glides on the bottoms of the desk feet. The leg sets are aligned on the bottom of the desktop using alignment markings I made earlier, and are screwed in place using 2-inch screws, 8 screws per leg set. This is what the completed desk looks like.